The Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Bridges, Cook, Quorum, Crowder, Danielson,
Good morning.
Donovan, Finberg, Fields, Foote, Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Hill,
Excused.
Icy, Colbert, Lee,
Here.
Lundeen, Marble, Moreno, Pedersen, Priola, Rankin, Rodriguez, Scott, Smallwood, Sonnenberg,
Excused.
Story, Tate, Todd, Williams,
Present.
Winter, Woodward, Zinzinger. Mr. President,
Here. With 33 present, 0 absent, 2 excused, we have a quorum. Mr. Majority Leader.
Which rule is that? Which rule is it? I know, but which one is it? One, what is it? 1B. 1B. Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend Senate Rule 1B to allow somebody other than a senator to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted, and Senate Rule 1B will be suspended. Members, this morning we are fortunate to have Cindy's grandchildren, Maddox, who is 4 years old, and Halen, who is 3 years old, from Littleton, Colorado, leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Cindy. You banged the gavel. That's okay. He's not going to bang the gavel anymore. Okay. Say, look out there, say.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America. Look out there. To the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, come on down. Thank you.
Approval of the journal. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the Journal of Saturday, June 13th, be dispensed with and the Journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Senate Services.
Regularly revised, House Bill 1014, 1297, 1410, 1420, 1424, 1425, 1426, 1427, House Current Resolution 1001, House Joint Resolution 1009, House Joint Resolution 1010, House Joint Resolution 1011, and House Joint Resolution 1012. Correctly revised, House Bill 1415, correctly enrolled, Senate Bill 3741, 176, 185, 197, 200, 207, 212, 217, and 219, Senate Joint Resolution 20.
Introduction of resolutions.
Senate Joint Resolution 24 by Senator Finberg and Representative Garnett concerning adjournment sine die.
Should I lay it over to Doug?
Mr. Majority Leader.
Right. Thank you, Mr. President. I move a little resolution called Senate Joint Resolution 24.
Is there any discussion? None at all. The motion is the adoption of SJR 024. Are there any no votes?
Should be unanimous. Complete agreement.
With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 024 is passed. Co-sponsors.
You guys just agree to stay next.
Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Quorum, Cook, Hanson, Story, Winter, Williams, Janal, Foote, Cook, Marble, Scott, Moreno, Fields, Bridges, Priola, Crowder, Heisey, Woodward, Gardner, Lundeen, Todd, Smallwood, Rankin, Lee, Tate, third reading of bills, consent. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the bills listed on the third readings of consent calendar?
House Bill 1425 by Representatives Geithner and Hooten, Senator Smallwood and Janal, concerning hospital patient visitation rights during the COVID-19 pandemic. House Bill 1297 by Representatives Baisley and Singer and Senator Lundeen, concerning clarifying that personal immunization exemptions cannot be used as the sole basis for child abuse or neglect for the purposes of Colorado's Children's Code. House Bill 1426 by Representatives Escar, McCluskey, and Senators Moreno and Rankin, concerning legislative engagement in the management of state operations.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the passage of all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar, which includes House Bills 1425, 1297, and 1426.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of all the bills listed on the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes on any of the bills on the third reading consent calendar? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1425 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Winter, Cook, Woodward, Crowder, Lundeen, Marble, Story, Priola, Tate, Quorum, Bridges, Todd, with 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, House Bill 1297 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Crowder, Cook, Heisey, Woodward, Tate, Gardner, Priola, Quorum, Todd, with 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1426 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Cook, Priola, Tate, Gardner, Woodward, Rodriguez, Winter, Zenzinger, Hanson, Crowder, Gonzalez, Donovan, Fields, Quorum, Heisey, Todd, Story, Pedersen, Scott, Marble, please have the President, and Senator Janal, and Senator Lee. Senator Lee, Senator Janal. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be recorded as a co-sponsor on House Bill 1297.
Senator Smallwood to be recorded as a co-sponsor on House Bill 1297. Third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1420.
House Bill 1420 by Representatives Soroto, Gray, and Senators Moreno and Hanson concerning the adjustment of certain state tax expenditures in order to allocate additional revenues to the State Education Fund.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move House Bill 1420 on third reading and final passage and request permission to offer a dreaded third reading amendment.
Will the good senator from Commerce City please explain the need in which the body should grant you permission to offer a third reading amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, shortly I will offer, with the Chamber's permission, I'll offer Amendment L069. It's a technical amendment that restores the bill to its introduced version.
The motion before the body is to allow the good senator permission. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, it doesn't actually do that. We overlooked, there was a missing date, an incorrect date, and so it will restore that correct date. And because of that correction, there also needs to be a small appropriation to the Department of Revenue to administer the act, but it does not include any FTE. It's just about programming.
The motion before the body is to allow permission to be granted to the good senator from Commerce City to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and permission is granted. There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Carpenter, please read Amendment L069.
Amendment L069, House Bill 1420.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Amendment L069.
To the amendment, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, as stated, just makes a simple date correction and then also includes a minor appropriation to the Department of Revenue for the administration of the act.
Is there discussion on Amendment L069? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of this amendment to House Bill 1420. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 2 excused, Amendment L069 is adopted. To the bill. Discussion. Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I rise in opposition to House Bill 1420. Why? Quite frankly, at the end of the day, this bill does not get the job done. Why do I say that? Because it doesn't help economic growth, which should be our key concern right now at this juncture in dealing with the pandemic. This bill at its genesis was an attack on the private sector, impairing their ability to create jobs and emerge from what is likely a pretty nasty black swan depression we're in. Now, I congratulate the sponsors of this legislation in making a pretty dramatic compromise. I wish I could say with certain, well, maybe I can just say I hope that this is because of some epiphany on their part as to how economic growth is connected to capital investment in the private sector. But my sense it's more because the governor maybe gave some bad messaging as to the disposition of the bill that weren't changed. And so whatever the circumstance may be, whether it be listening to the governor or listening to better senses, I congratulate them for that. I think in the committee, we kind of heard debate in general about priorities. And I think it's safe to say that priorities can be reflected in every legislation, and this is a priority about, I should say, House Bill 1420 establishes a priority of government over the private sector, plain and simple. And you can see that based on the rationale in the committee and the discussion about, the equality of jobs and the equality of each sector's role in state GDP, but that's not true. The private sector has an outsized role, both in terms of consumption and creating capital investment. My daughter, who's an economist in Los Angeles, who I forgot to give a shout out to on Saturday, spent some time here as an aide as well as an aide in a different state capital, noted there are folks that believe that a business is just a monopoly man sitting on a pile of monopoly money. And all we do down here is kind of like a game to, get money out from underneath the monopoly man. That's not how business is, folks. First of all, there is no monopoly man just sitting on an unending supply of cash that we need to just distribute. Secondly of all, that kind of reveals a misunderstanding that the overall pie of the economy can grow or shrink depending on what we do. And if we pass bad legislation that taxes and penalizes productivity, taxes and penalizes businesses' ability to take risk and create jobs and invest in the future, then we're shrinking the whole pie, and that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the business, and nor does it help government in terms of its ability to get tax revenue from the economy. So I just leave here today hoping that at some point the economy gets better, notwithstanding bad things we do, and hopefully with the help of the good things we do here, and that by the time you guys are here next year, there'll be some light at the end of the tunnel fiscally, both for our hardworking entrepreneurs as well as for government budgeters and forecasters. I will say, you know, and one last thing about living in the world of business, people here always say, it's such a tough job you have down here. It's so stressful. How do you do it? You know, prior to coming here, I used to wake up all the time at 3:30 in the morning worrying about the monthly profit and loss statement, who I was going to hire, who I was going to fire, how are we going to get the job done, how are we going to fulfill some promise to a customer, you know, how are we going to pay the bills, make payroll. And ever since I've been here, I've been sleeping like a baby. Thank you, members.
Is there further discussion? Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. The senator from Sterling, who is not able to be with us this morning, took a moment of privilege last week to discuss process. House Bill 1420 has been pushed through this process. It is now amended, and indeed one of the sponsors made a lighthearted joke. I appreciate lighthearted jokes, particularly this late in the session on the 160th day. That it was being returned to its original form, and that caused people to raise an eyebrow and look up. Often people say to me, or ask me, they say, Bob, do people even read those bills they pass? And I have to say, well, I endeavor to read enough of each and every bill that I vote on to know and understand how I should vote on the bill. But the bills move so quickly, frankly, that people do not know. And indeed, our Constitution has a provision to ensure that bills are read by someone. And this bill having moved through the process as quickly as it has, I believe that this chamber would benefit by its reading at length, and so I request House Bill 1420 be read at length, even through the mask.
Mr. Carpenter, please read.
Mr. President,
Senator Gardner.
I withdraw my request.
The good senator's request will be withdrawn. Is there further discussion? Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I appreciate the final discussion this morning. It is an important part of what we do here. This is why we have a third reading. In my 4 years at the General Assembly, I have seen bills move faster. I've seen bills move slower. I think we had a tremendous amount of discussion and back and forth. All of you gave us a chance to do that over the last few days. It's what many of our recesses were about as we finished up these final bills. And that's part of what we do here. I don't think there was a truncation of that. I think we did exactly what this process requires us to do, which is to talk to all sides. And I think that was done in earnest, done in good faith, and that's how we got to the result we have in front of you today for final passage. I would like to ask us to be very careful about what I believe is a false narrative. This is not an attack on a certain group. This is not an attack on a certain category of companies or people. This is us doing the difficult job of governing, of looking for the right trade-offs, of making sure we prioritize the school children of this state, that we prioritize the working families of this state. That's what this bill does. We are asking for support in this bill for the earned income tax credit that goes to working families and for a substantial amount of money for K-12 education. It's been said by both sides of the aisle how much we want to prioritize our kids. I believe that's exactly what we've done here. And in my career before running for office, I also had 3:30 a.m. sleepless nights as I managed what was at that point about a $50 million P&L. I hear you loud and clear. We worked hard on this bill, not because we're trying to attack somebody, but because we were trying to get that balance right. We heard the concerns. We talked to all the stakeholders and continued to work on this bill until we got it into this balanced form we have before you today. So I ask you to not accept that premise. I believe it's false. I ask you today to support working families. I ask you today to support K-12 education. Thank you.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, I appreciate your time hearing the bill. Although it's in a different form than when it was introduced, it's no less important. Businesses look at both sides of the ledger. They look at revenue and they look at expenditures. The state should be no different. And in an environment where we're facing a historic revenue shortfall of $3.2 billion, tax expenditures and tax policy changes should be viewed as expenditures. They are no different than the expenditures we make on K-12 education, or human services, or services for the intellectually and developmentally disabled. They are expenditures. And the question is, can we afford these expenditures in the current environment that we're in? My answer to that is no. And although this bill is more limited in its scope than when it was introduced, it's still extremely important in trying to make up for some historic shortfalls in revenue and to make up for cuts in our most vital programs, including K-12 education. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1420 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Crowder, Quorum, Cook, Woodward, Gardner, Heisey, Scott, Tate, Marble, Lundeen, Rankin, Smallwood. With 20 ayes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1420 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Winter, Story, Pedersen, Todd, Gonzalez, Williams, Danielson, Foote, the Majority Leader, Janal, Fields, Bridges. Please have the president. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of the House Bill 1424.
House Bill 1424 by Representatives Coleman, Supersenators Gonzalez, and Marble concerning social equity licensees and regulated marijuana.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move House Bill 1424 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1424 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Cook, Minority Leader, Gardner, Lundin, Woodward, Rankin, Heisey, Scott. Senator Priola, are you a... Crowder. Any no votes? With 24 aye votes, 9 no votes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1424 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, the Majority Leader, Lee, Williams, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to HCR 1001.
House Concurrent Resolution 1001 by Representatives Singer and Wilson, Senators Smallwood and Todd, submitting to the registered electors of the state of Colorado amendment to the Colorado Constitution concerning the conduct of charitable gaming activities in connection therewith, allowing bingo raffle licensees to hire managers and operators of games, reducing a required period of charitable organization continuous existence before obtaining a charitable gaming license and making an appropriation.
Members, HCR 1001 requires 2/3 vote, which will require 24 votes. Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and we move HCR 1001 on third and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of HCR 1001. Are there any no votes? Senators Donovan, Winter, Bridges, no votes on HCR 1001. Senators Gonzalez, Pedersen, with 28 aye votes, 5 no votes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, HCR 1001 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Cook, Crowder, Gardner, Tate, Scott, Priola, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of the House Bill 1014.
House Bill 1014 by Representatives Tipper and Richardson and Gardner concerning unconsented use of donor gaming and fertility treatment.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1014 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1014 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1014 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Cook, Moreno, Majority Leader, Priola, the Minority Leader, Todd, Gonzalez, Crowder, Marble, Rankin, Scott, Smallwood, Janal, Todd, Lee, Danielson, Story, Fields, Bridges, Hanson, Tate, Pedersen. Please add the president. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1410.
House Bill 1410 by Representatives Gonzalez Gutierrez and Exum Senators Gonzalez and Zenzinger, concerning assistance for individuals facing a housing-related hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in connection therewith transferring money received from the federal government pursuant to the CARES Act to the Eviction Legal Defense Fund and the Housing Development Grant Fund to provide such assistance and making an appropriation.
Senator Zenzinger, or excuse me, Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move House Bill 1410 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1410 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Scott, Minority Leader, Rankin, Lundin, Woodward, Cook, Smallwood, Crowder, Quorum, Tate, Heisey, Marble, Gardner, with 20 ayes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1410 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Moreno, Janal, Hanson, Winter, Priola, Danielson, Williams, Lee, Story, the Majority Leader, Foote, Donovan, Fields, Pedersen. Please add the president. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1427.
House Bill 1427 by Representatives Caravan, McCluskey, and Senators Fields and Moreno, concerning the taxation of products that contain nicotine in connection therewith, incrementally increasing the cigarette tax and the tobacco products tax, expanding both of these taxes to apply to sales to consumers from outside of the state, creating an inventory tax that applies when the cigarette tax increases, creating a minimum tax amount for moist enough tobacco products, creating a tax on nicotine products that is equal to the total tax on tobacco products, establishing new rates for cigarettes, tobacco products, and nicotine products that are modified risk tobacco products that are half of the statutory tax, referring a ballot issue for prior voter approval for the new and increased taxes and allocating new tax revenue.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move House Bill 1427 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, House Bill 1427 refers a measure to the voters on this year's ballot in November to raise taxes on cigarettes. What's most significant about this, it also applies taxes on nicotine vaping products. By doing so, this would be a huge step forward on behalf of children in the state of Colorado and public health. More specifically, it will provide rural schools with an amount of $30 million over the course of 3 consecutive years, preschool slots, health care, state education fund, and also the general fund in the tune of thousands and thousands and millions of dollars. Members, please vote yes on House Bill 1427.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1427 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Crowder, Heisey, Woodward, Lundin, the Minority Leader, Smallwood, Cook, Priola, Gardner, Rankin, Tate, Scott. With 20 ayes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1427 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Foote, the Majority Leader, Winter, Story, Janal, Todd, Pedersen. Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 222?
Senate Bill 222 by Senators Winter Bridges and Representatives Waylon Young concerning a grant program for small businesses affected by economic hardship caused by the COVID-19 pandemic that is financed by money received from the federal government pursuant to the CARES Act in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Winter. Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with House amendments. You're the co-prime on the bill. You can't hiss at me. to amendments on Senate Bill 222. Triple two.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 222. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, that motion is adopted.
Move for repassage.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 222.
The motion before the body is the repassage of Senate Bill 222. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 2 excused, Senate Bill 222 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Senators Janal, Pedersen, Tate, Danielson, Williams, Cook, Crowder, Rankin, Gardner, Lundin, Todd, Marble, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 028.
Senate Bill 28 by Senators Patterson and Pirola and Representatives Mateo and Herrick concerning measures to assist an individual's recovery from a substance use disorder in connection therewith making and reducing an appropriation.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 28. All they did was update the interim committee language, and I ask for your support.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the allowment of concurrence with amendments to Senate Bill 028. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to repass Senate Bill 28.
The motion before the body is the repassage of Senate Bill 028. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Cook, Heisey, the Minority Leader, Woodward, Smallwood, Gardner, Rankin, Scott. With 24 aye votes, 9 no votes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 028 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Senators Lee, Danielson. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 213.
Senate Bill 213 by Senators Bridges and Pirola and Representative Larson and Roberts concerning the authority of a business license to sell alcohol beverages for consumption on the licensed premises to sell alcohol beverages for consumption off the licensed premises.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concurs with House amendments to Senate Bill 213.
The motion is there any discussion prior? The motion is that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 213. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 213, the Restaurant Recovery Act, on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the repassage of Senate Bill 213. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 213 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Senators Danielson, Lee, Gardner, Tate, Pedersen, Story, Winter, Lundin, Todd, Rankin, Cook, Lee, Williams, Heisey. Please have the president. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 218.
Senate Bill 218 by Senators Van Bergen Lee and Representative Singer McKean concerning measures by the Department of Public Health and Environment to protect the public from certain hazardous substances in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 218.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 218. Are there any no votes? Senator Scott.
Can you explain why you're a no vote?
With any other no votes on concurrence? Senator Tate. With 31 ayes, 2 no votes here absent, and 2 excused, that motion is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 218.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the repassage of Senate Bill 218. Are there any no votes? Senators Scott, Marble, Cook, Coram, Crowder, the Minority Leader, Heisey, Woodward, Rankin, Tate, Smallwood, Gardner, Lundin, with 20 ayes, 13 no votes here absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 218. Senate Bill 218 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Senators Story. Senator Story. Co-sponsors. Danielson. Todd. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 223. Excuse me, Senate Bill 023.
Senate Bill 23 by Senator Gardner Gonzalez, Representative Michaelson, Janae Van Winkle concerning creating a multi-agency working group to address school safety.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, enough already. I move that the Senate reject House amendments to Senate Bill 23 and that a conference committee be formed.
It's about time. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is that the Senate not concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 23 and that a conference committee be appointed. Are there any no votes? Senators Moreno. With 32 ayes, 1 no vote, 0 absent, 2 excused, that motion is adopted. The following senators are appointed as members on the first conference committee on Senate Bill 023. They include Senators Gonzalez, Chair, Fields, and Gardner. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 215.
Senate Bill 215 by Senators Moreno and Donovan, Representatives Kennedy and McCluskey, concerning measures to address the affordability of health insurance for Colorado's purchasing coverage on the individual market and in connection therewith, establishing an enterprise to administer a health insurance affordability fee assessed on certain health insurers and a special assessment on hospitals to fund measures to reduce consumer costs for individual health coverage plans.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move to concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 215.
Is there any discussion? Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we had a really robust discussion about this issue in the Senate, and an important one, I thought. There were some changes made to the House, primarily based around what the assessment will be on both nonprofit and for-profit carriers. Those numbers were actually changed to 1.15 for nonprofit carriers and 2.1 for-profit carriers. There's also some more specific language around actual amounts to different programs that this new enterprise will engage in, a couple of changes to the enterprise board, and to address some of the concerns, also putting a cap on the expenditures that this enterprise can make in certain in certain areas. For example, outreach, there's now a cap on how much money can be allocated for that purpose. With these changes, I'm proud to report that many of the groups who were originally opposed to this legislation have removed their opposition. So the Colorado Association of Health Plans and the major carriers no longer oppose the bill, as well as some of the others who had concerns. Basically, no opposition that we know of. No one loves the bill, but that probably means you landed at relatively the right policy.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will admit, Senator, I haven't really read into this. Can you tell me how different this is from what it was last year? In other words, is it about the same amount of money involved? Are the charges basically the same out there? If you can just give me a brief explanation, I'd appreciate it.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the senator from Alamosa. So the enterprise that's being created is slightly different than the reinsurance enterprise that exists today, and that's because the reinsurance enterprise is limited to just reinsurance. Actually, this bill is a little different than the reinsurance bill that passed last year because it actually makes a slight reduction to the funds going to reinsurance and expands some of the others that in order to make sure that the unintended consequences of reinsurance in actually increasing slightly premiums for some, that more money goes to addressing that issue than goes to reinsurance. So it's slightly less than what went to reinsurance last year, and I think will correct a lot of the unintended consequences that happened last year.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to acknowledge that my colleague from Commerce City mentioned that some groups had gone neutral on the bill. However, I'm up here to possibly be corrected. My understanding is that your small business groups like NFIB and your small chambers are not neutral on the bill because the crux of this whole thing is that we're raising insurance costs to the individual and small group market, thus once again putting small business at a disadvantage against large enterprises. So happy to be corrected if I'm wrong in the evaluation of external stakeholder support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Moreno. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the senator from Centennial for bringing up those points. I believe that's accurate. However, some of the business interests that were originally opposed, for example, the Colorado Association of Commerce and Industry and the Colorado Competitive Council, those groups have removed opposition, but I can't speak to those like NFIB.
Senator Lundeen.
Thank you very much. So I just want to be really clear for the record that capitulation is very different than support. Individual insurance, small business insurance still will be dramatically negatively impacted by this. And here's the big deal. This bill creates an enterprise, fancy new word for additional aspect of ever-growing state government that will soon be approaching $1 billion in its size. Just because in exhaustion, individuals and various sectors of society have capitulated to the point of, yes, we give. It could get worse, please don't make it worse, is the response. Don't let that lull you into thinking and believing that this is great policy or that this is the best pathway forward. I have to stand in vigorous opposition to the ever-growing massive expansion of government and loss of control from the hands of individuals and small job creators that this enterprise and this bill represents. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. So you probably don't remember, but I had a few words to say about this bill when it was on seconds here. And I want to be fair, because there's a lot that I struggled with in the details of this bill when we had it here in the Senate the first time, and the majority party certainly could have just had this, in my opinion, sail through with dissent, move it on to the governor's office, and off we go. We have a new law. But where I want to give credit, and what I would encourage that we do to set the tone for next session when it starts here in a few days, is if you take a look at the re-revised bill and you look at the shaded areas and you see where the sponsors in the House really, I think, took to heart the benefit of a little bit of fertilizer in the garden of legislative opportunity, as a wise man once told me. I complained a lot about the lack of details in how this money was supposed to be spent. And you'll see in shaded areas where they, in the House, which we're about to agree with here, hopefully in the Senate, really put some finer points on exactly how that money was going to be spent. I complained a lot about the structure of the board, and you'll see that they did, I think, a reasonably good job in expanding the board, not nearly to as many people as I think it needs to meet the legislative intent, but it was a good move forward. I complained mostly about my belief that a bill like this continues us down the path of fulfilling the governor's campaign promise of creating a multi-state single-payer system. And to actually go into this piece of legislation on page 21, lines 20 through 26, and specifically call out that that is not the intent of legislators, helps me a lot. It helps me sleep a little bit better during the interim, that perhaps those of us in this room, regardless of what side of the aisle we sit on, perhaps haven't bought into that promise from the governor, and perhaps we do see that there's maybe a better path forward in this. So I'm really grateful. I'm grateful when people listen, especially when they don't have to. Listen and act when they don't have to, because the majority party didn't need to do either one, yet they did. So I'm the first to be, I think, really loud and aggressive in healthcare issues that I think are poorly crafted. So I want to be one of the first to express my gratitude to the bill sponsors for supporting what was done in the House, for the willingness of the House members to continue conversations around this. And even though it's something that, on principle, you all know that I still disagree with reinsurance, and you probably know why. So I don't agree with reinsurance, and continuing and expanding that program is something that we're still a ways away from me supporting. This new bill made great strides, and I want to make sure the citizens of Colorado know that I'm grateful to the sponsors for that. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sponsors.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to ask another question. Now, the reassurance bill last year, which rural Colorado benefited considerably. Where would that be if this bill were to fail? Would that discount that we're receiving in rural Colorado vanish? And but I need some, honest answers on that.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The program would expire in 1 year from now and cease to exist, and we would likely see those rates go back up the 25 to 33%.
Is there further discussion? The motion before the body is to allow for that the Senate concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 215. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 no's, 0 absent, and 2 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move for the repassage of Senate Bill 215 as amended.
The motion is for the repassage of Senate Bill 215 as amended. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader. Senators Cook, Heisey, Gardner, Rankin, Marble, Scott, Tate, Lundeen, Smallwood, Priola, Woodward. With 21 aye votes, 12 no votes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 215 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Senators Danielson, Pedersen, co-sponsors, Janal, Story,
You doing?
co-sponsor on Senate Bill 215, Senator Bridges will be added as a co-sponsor. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the conference committee for Senate Bill 205 be given permission to go beyond the scope.
The motion before the body is to grant permission to the conferees on the first conference committee on Senate Bill 205 to go beyond the scope of the differences between the two chambers. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed no. The ayes have it, and that permission is granted.
Thank you.
Consideration of governor's appointments. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read all the appointments to the Colorado State Fair Authority Board Commission?
Members of the Colorado State Fair Authority Board of Commissioners effective November 1st, 2019, for term expiring November 1st, 2023. Brian Kohler, Copeland with Longmont, Colorado, and affiliated from the 4th Congressional District, appointed for term expiring November 1st, 2021. Jeffrey Mandarich, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and affiliated from the 5th Congressional District and certified public accountant, occasioned by the resignation of William Joseph Heibel of Colorado Springs, Colorado, appointed for term expiring November 1st, 2023. Miguel Baca Barragan of Denver, Colorado, Democrat from the 1st Congressional District, appointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the consideration of governor's appointments lay over until tomorrow.
All the motion before us is to lay over the appointments. There's no discussion on this motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is granted. Consideration of governor's appointments will be laid over from 6 to 6/16/2020.
approved. We're done. They get approved. He gets reappointed. This is so wrong.
Brief recess. The Senate will come back to order. Announcements.
Solved it?
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Conference Committee on Senate Bill 23 will be meeting 15 minutes upon adjournment in room 352. And so the conference committee members For Senate Bill 23, we'll be meeting 15 minutes upon adjournment. Thank you.
I'm busy.
Me too, but here we are.
3:52.
Yeah.
So am I doing the resolution now? Is that what you said? I'm doing the resolution now. Okay.
Senator Cobb. Senator
Thank
Cobb.
you. Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, the Senate and House of Representatives and the Senate are hereby wanting to make a recognition of a great lady right here in the state of Colorado and right here at the Capitol. So the House of Representatives and Senate of the Colorado General Assembly wish to acknowledge Susan Little for her dedication and enduring commitment to serving the legislative process as she retires from the Legislative Council staff after, are you sitting down? 31 years in July. That is an amazing amount of commitment. So we are recognizing Susan Little today as the Manager of Constituent and Library Services of the Colorado Legislative Council staff. Susan began her career in Leg Council in July of 1989. Now I know some of you might not have been born then, but most of us were not here at the legislature at that time. She has been a member of the research and committee staff and quickly developed a love for the legislative process and the protectiveness of the manager of constituent and library services. And if any of you have had an opportunity to say, I have a constituent that has a concern, can you address it? Her turnaround and her love and her care and her commitment is immediate, and it is done with great compassion. Her attention to detail and conscientiousness has led to the Blue Book publication team for 14 years. Now, I don't know how many people want to sign up for that, the Blue Book publication, in both the congressional redistricting and the House and Senate reapportionment efforts, constituent services, and obviously her compassion and her empathy when you go to talk to her is very evident. But it carries through in terms of follow-through through responding to constituents as well as to each of us as legislators. She has absolutely impeccable accuracy, articulation, and getting to the source of what an issue is and helping to sort that through and make sure that there is remedy given to the issues that are brought before her. She has mentored many junior staff members and, again, carried over her ideals and her values of being accurate, thorough, and unbiased. And I think those are skills that are very difficult. When the longer you're here, the more you might start looking at things a little differently. But her unbiased viewpoints are absolutely immaculate with how she has carried through on that and through not only the junior staff members that she has brought in and trained and mentored, but also with fellow Leg Council and the fellow memberships that she works with. We thank you, Susan, so much for your years of service. We thank you for your dedication to the Institute of the General Assembly, sharing your amazing talents and gifts with each and every one of us. You're very professional, but at the same time, extremely warm, friendly, and loving and patient with each of us as we continue to maybe ask the same questions over and over. We extend our best wishes for a very rewarding retirement, and we are really wishing you well on taking out of the Capitol great memories, as well as great friendships. And God bless you. On request of Speaker Casey Becker and President Leroy Garcia, given this 12th day of June 2020, the state capital of Denver, Colorado. Folks, please join me in saying thank you, saying gratitude. And the words thank you are something that it's not enough. It's like bouquets of thank you, bouquets of thank you. But gratitude for a dedicated career, but more than that, a dedicated friendship and authenticity. And with that, please join me in thanking Susan Little. Where is she?
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. 18 years ago, I began working in this building.
Mr. Minority Leader, would you request a moment of privilege?
I apologize, Mr. President. I would think I would know that by now. Mr. President, I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, 18 years ago, I was blessed to start my career here in the Capitol when my employer asked me to become more involved in government relations and to specifically manage the lobbying effort of that business trade association. One of the people I met here in the Capitol became a friend and really a mentor. She has been involved in association management like I was. Unlike me, I think she's probably done work as a full-time lobbyist in this building. But it's her work as an association manager that I want to celebrate today because, as I understand, today will be the last day of Jean McAvoy's career professionally here in the state capitol. Through my time representing the trade association that I work for, Jean was an ally and sometimes an opponent. We weren't always on the same side. But I learned from Jean that being truthful and accountable for what we say and do here is critical. When I first ran as a candidate in 2010, Jean and the Colorado Licensed Beverage Association were one of those interviews that candidates go through, and I was grateful to earn their support that year. Thank you. Since I've come inside the glass, we have had many beer wars. I remember during my first 2 years in the House, and the man who sat next to me, who will likely be a member of this chamber next year, ran a bill that I opposed, and so did Jean. But during that time, Jean was polite, respectful, truthful, accountable, and again, a model for what folks in the lobby ought to be. In 2016, a bill came forth because there was a ballot initiative. And Jean and the people who she represents, small liquor stores, were under a tremendous amount of pressure. The ballot initiative looked to be likely to pass. The three-tier liquor regulatory system came to the table and negotiated a bill. Senator Pat Stedman sponsored that bill. It was Senate Bill 16-197. And that bill was assigned to the committee that I was blessed to chair at the time, Senate Business and Labor. Before that committee hearing and during it, I asked Jean over and over again, "Are you sure?" And sometimes fighting back tears, she said, "Yes." In 2018, Leader Guzman and I sponsored Senate Bill 243, which sought to resolve some unanswered regulatory questions. And that, too, was a stressful time. But Jean was there, truth on her lips and accountability in her soul, and worked through yet another tough year. Jean has announced her resignation, her retirement from the Colorado Licensed Beverage Association. And I wanted to take a moment to say thank you for her example in this building. And I was really surprised and excited when someone by the name of Leroy Garcia, who I understand holds a very prominent position here in the Senate, I think he might be president, asked to join me in this. The tribute that we have here says, for her substantial contributions to the betterment of the state of Colorado by helping improve dialogue, mutual respect, and the engagement of parties from all sides of the complex alcohol policy spectrum. For her many commitments and contributions, she has earned the respect of her colleagues and peers who have valued serving and working with her on challenging public policy matters. We give thanks for her commitment to faithfully and vigorously represent the interests of the members of the Colorado Licensed Beverage Association. She will be missed under the Golden Dome that graces the Colorado State Capitol. Jean, thank you for your service, and congratulations on your retirement. And on a personal note, Jean, thank you for being a mentor, a teacher, an example to me in the 18 years that I've been blessed to work in this beautiful building, 8 out there and 10 in here. I'm better for it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, I'm so honored to join the minority leader in this tribute. I've had the wonderful fortune of knowing Ms. Jean McAvoy for at least the last 12 years. I knew her a little bit before I came into the legislature. And, you know, if you haven't had the opportunity to know and work with her, she's just such a wonderful, wonderful woman, super, super smart, very passionate, advocating for small businesses that she represents. And I know she will be sadly missed. I've had the fortune of enjoying to get to know her also on a personal level, joining her for golfing and other things. And so, Jean, you will be missed in this building. It will never be the same without you. We wish you the very, very best for your retirement, and we'll know that we will be seeing you soon. The minority leader and I also have as a tribute this wonderful Colorado flag which flew over the Capitol today. So we are honored to both present the tribute and the Colorado flag to you, Jean, and wish you the very, very best. Are there any further announcements? Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to take a minute and thank Representative Pedersen for the treats. You know, they were very good over here. Senator Pedersen. You know, I think I would like to also invite you down the Arkansas Valley to see what Rocky Ford cantaloupes are really like. But, you know, although these are good, make no mistake about it, the Rocky Ford melons are like cream and peaches. But anyway, thanks again, Senator Pedersen, for the treats.
Members, I do also want to make note of this, as we have sent the resolution for sine die, that we will have the traditional ball drop. As you know, that is a tradition that is carried on in the Senate, and in my time, that was held by Senator Andy Kerr, who passed that tradition on to Senator Angela Williams. This week I spoke with Senator Williams and took possession of the rubber band ball. That responsibility now is passed on to Senator Chris Hansen, and we will have that. Now, I will say it is interesting that the minority party And the responsible agent for that is the good senator from Fort Collins, is saying that they don't have a ball this year. So I have directed her to make sure that they have equal representation, even though they've consistently lost every year in the ball drop. So we'll see later today during the ball drop. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask for a moment of personal privilege, which is
The good senator will be granted a moment of personal privilege from Grand Junction after he pays $5 for wearing jeans.
You know, actually, Mr. President, I was just going to go ahead and give $20 now because I'm probably going to break some more in a minute.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. It's nice to see we have a half-empty chamber because that's what I'm used to when I come to the mic. And it usually empties out much faster once I start to speak, so I'm pretty used to that. As all of you and some of you may not know, I am actually running for Mesa County Commissioner. I may not be back. That would usually draw a standing ovation, but apparently not. Well, thank you, Jack. Thank you. Those of you that would not like to see me go, I can give you a website where you can help me if you'd like to. But I thought, you know, what the heck? Might as well get down here and say a few nice things, if you will, about some of my colleagues. I'm sorry I missed some of the memorials, but I usually save those for funerals, so I don't know exactly why they're called memorials, but whatever. I guess that's what we do these days. A couple things that I thought about the last few days. When I went into the legislature with several of you as a freshman, we had Mr. Paul Weissman was our mentor, if you will, or our teacher. And I didn't know if he was a Republican or a Democrat. I didn't know, but he was a good character. But he told me something. He said, you know, there's 2 days you're going to remember in this building. The day you come in and the day you leave. Everything else in the middle is going to be a blur. And he was right. He was very, very right. The other thing that he told us was, if you ever start thinking you're a real big deal, take your badge off and walk down the 16th Street Mall. See how many people recognize you. Very true, right? We're not a big deal. Now, I got to kind of fill you guys in on a couple things. One of the rules I'm going to break is I'm going to call senators by name. And the reason I'm going to do that is it's kind of like if you think about people from out of state, or when you travel to Oklahoma or Texas and they call out a tornado warning on the radio and they start rattling off counties where the tornado warning is. You know, Washington County, Dixon County, Johnson County. And you're just trying to get to Kansas City. You don't know where the heck those counties are. The people of Colorado have no idea when we say the good senator from Arapahoe County. Duh, they have no idea what we're talking about. That might be one of those executive rule changes you guys could work on. Well, they don't, you, of course. How could we miss? Oh, Lord. So anyhow, the second thing I think you all need to understand that's been taking place the last couple weeks, for my friends who have chosen to wear masks in the well, which I respect that greatly, is that it sounds, when you're on a remote side, and whoops, one of my colleagues is still there, it sounds like you're ordering at a drive-up window at Wendy's. So therefore, the people of the state of Colorado have absolutely no idea what was said in the last 2 weeks. Trust me, no idea. They're going to have to read it to understand what took place. It's a very ugly scene. I did hear there was some video of like 20 Grubhub vehicles outside because they thought you guys were actually ordering food and were trying to deliver. But that didn't happen. You know, the other thing I'd like to say before I get off this well, maybe my last chance, is there's a lot of memories that you build up over time as you're in this building. But they kind of get broke down to moments, right? We can't remember everything we did. We remember certain moments. Senator, no, I'm sorry, she's gone from the screen. She kind of looked like a Dateline witness up there this morning. You couldn't tell where she was. I weighed 105 pounds when I entered this chamber with Angela Williams. She immediately introduced me to Fritos and M&Ms. She destroyed my life, but that's what she did to me. So now I weigh 112 pounds. I wish. But you remember those kind of goofy little moments that take place. Senator Pedersen, Brittany, wherever she went,
I remember a moment when she first came to the House of Representatives. There she is. And she was walking around on the Republican side. And I thought, who is this young blonde lady that's wandering around our side of the aisle? And I actually came over to my desk and she was introducing herself very politely. And I asked her, what in the world are you doing? Get back where you belong. And she's like, no. She wanted us to, she said to me that she wanted to understand why we fight so much in elections. Do you remember that? I know why we fight so much in elections. Well, now you do know, but back then she didn't know. But it was a comical moment that I'll never forget because she truly wanted to understand. Why is it we could get along so well as a group in the chamber, but when it came to an election, things got ugly? We know now, don't we? That was a moment that I remember. I remember running bills with certain individuals for certain reasons. But again, it's just a moment in time, and those are things I think you have to grab onto and hang on to because you cannot remember 5, 6, 8, 10 years of what we do in this building. Another funny one, and I don't see him sitting back here, was Senator Crowder, or Larry as I'm going to call him. As I heard through the wonderful remote system the other day on his memorial, talking about never having a chance to run a bill with Larry Crowder. So I got a chance this year. Never had that chance. So sometime this late summer, I sent him an email. I had this bill on veterans' remains, which was a good bill. And I sent it off. You don't hear back from Larry for weeks. And you finally get back this response that said, sure. That was it. Will you be a sponsor of it? Sure. That was it. Then when I saw him here at the Capitol, once we got ready to run the bill, we're walking across the street, as I recall, and I said, hey, Larry, this is really kind of fun. I get to finally run a bill with you. And he looked at me and said, so what? That's Larry Crowder, right? I mean, that's just Larry in a nutshell. That's the way he operates. Senator Donovan, my good little buddy from Vail. We worked together. We weren't supposed to. We got chewed out a little bit about doing so, but we did. But we ran a very impactful bill, and I'll always remember that, because we actually saved lives in Colorado. And those are the kind of moments you think about and you go, wow, that was impactful. I'd never worked on a piece of legislation that hard, nor would I ever again, where you have something like, what do we have, 70 stakeholders, and the fights were on. We traveled the state, and we got stuck with a food bill in Greeley for $800. That part I'll never forget. That was just the booze, yeah. Amendment 41 got us. We had to belly up and pay for the food. But those are the kind of moments I think we all take home and we are going to cherish them. I thank all of you for what you do here. This isn't an easy job. It's very difficult. I've actually turned in Senator Janal at the airport to the TSA. I did, didn't I? I did. Yeah, I know, but I'm not going to keep going. No, I know. Senator Todd and I have run into each other at the airports more than anywhere else. She's either coming and going, and I told her the last time it was a Thursday night, which, as you may know, I don't like being here on Fridays. Does anybody know that? Okay. But on a Thursday night, I'm at DIA, and Senator Todd is coming back from somewhere, right? So I'm at Elway's having something to eat. There she is. And I kept telling her, no, you're supposed to go the other way. No, we're leaving. It's Thursday night. So we've run into each other at airports more than anything. But I want to thank all of you. You guys have been great friends. We've had our challenges. Yes, we're always going to argue, and we're going to fight, and we're going to get things not done sometimes. But I know you all care about your constituents deeply. I care about mine. And one last thing, if I do come back, I take back everything I said. If I don't come back, I pretty much covered it. Except one item. My good friend Chris Holbert, worst guitar player I've ever met in my life. But Lord knows he's trying. He is trying. And I do enjoy watching him strum away in his office. One last thing for Mr. Majority Leader. You always told me you would do anything to make sure I didn't get elected. Well, you might have succeeded with this damn session. You stretched it as long as you could. Thank you very much. And one last thing for our wonderful president. You are not in the military any longer. You just aren't. Did they tell you you left? Military time every time we do something? And a canteen for your water? All I can say is, dude. Really? And of course, Cindy. How many times are you going to retire? Where are you? My God. There she is. 3 times? 5. I mean, the woman's got it made. I love her. But good luck to you. Wish you all the best, regardless of what you end up doing. But I do love all of you guys. Thank you so much for the time here.
Senator Priol.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Members, I come down here today for 2 reasons. First, I have a letter from a constituent that I received about a week ago, and I'd like to just touch on a small part of it. But understanding that it's definitely within the realm of possibility that I may not return, I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for sharing the experience of the prior 2 years and what it's meant to me and what it's meant to the state of Colorado. So this is from, I'll just use his first name, Bob, and lives in Thornton, and he's registered Republican. My first issue is cooperation. I see our country as being very divided. We are divided by race. We are divided by socioeconomic status. We are divided by religion and beliefs. We're divided politically. The division in politics seems to me, in a time of great need, to work together to solve some of the biggest issues our country and state have faced. We are divided. The 2 political parties are not working together. Neither side is listening to the other. Neither tries to understand the other point of view. It is not necessary to agree, but it is necessary to understand. The late author Stephen Covey wrote of the habits, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." My hope for you and or any politician is that you would seek to understand, then to be understood. Now, I read just a small portion of this letter, and if any of you want to offline see the entire letter, I would be glad to share it with you. But I honestly am proud of our body this year because I think we really worked to seek understanding, and we did some really good work for the state of Colorado. And if you have some time to do a Google search and see what motivates Senator Priola, Google Cincinnatus, a Roman in the early Republic, about 460 BC, or Google the Greek philosophy of the golden mean. Thank you, and have a good summer.
Message from the House.
The House has voted to carry Senate amendments to House Bill 1415 and has repassed the bill so amended. The House has voted to recede from its position on Senate Bill 51 and has repassed the bill. The bill is returned herewith. The House has adopted and returns herewith Senate Joint Resolution 21.
Delivery of the Governor.
To the Governor for signature on Monday, June 15, 2020 at 9:19 a.m. Senate Bill 26, 68, 90, 102, 106, 124, 126, 140, 155, 194, and 209.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I know everyone was down here saying nice things, almost like we're approaching the end. But there's actually a little bit more to do. So we have a couple of conference committees, including for Senate Bill 205, which Senator Smallwood, you are on. We will have that conference committee at 1 o'clock in room 357. And then upon adjournment of that one, I think that would be the last conference committee, and then we'll come back to the floor, adopt those committee reports, and finish up any last business before we do the ball drop. So, Mr. President, for now, I move the Senate recess until 1:15 p.m. We'll do a call to Senate to make sure you all know exactly when it is we'll be coming back.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand in recess until 13:15 today.
Members, the good senator from Lakewood wanted me to remind you all that there are refreshments on the balcony, so help yourself.